I knew I was screwed the minute Jeremy called me kiddo in front of the board. Picture this. A room full of venture capitalists who wear Patagonia vests like priest robes, and me, 37, sleeves rolled up, hands still trembling from a triple espresso-fueled sprint to finish the damn platform that kept this rotting startup alive. And there's Jeremy, leaning back like he just solved climate change, clicking through my demo deck with the confidence of a guy who once watched The Social Network and thought Zuckerberg was the hero. The team worked hard, he says, smirking at me like I'm the team's barista. But the architectural pivot was my call. We needed to streamline for scale. I didn't pivot anything. I rebuilt the system from scratch when the last CTO rage quit over our spaghetti backend. I wrote every damn controller. I rewired our CI/CD, even patched our legacy payment gateway after some intern hard-coded the API keys into a public repo. But sure, Jeremy, tell them how you guided the vision. That was the moment it clicked, not the betrayal. I'd seen that coming a mile away, but the performance, the pure theater. They never wanted a leader. They wanted someone loud. Loud like Jeremy, who repeated my ideas verbatim 10 decibels higher and 15 IQ points dumber. Once told me I was too quiet to lead anything after I'd pulled a 70-hour week, fixing his botched rollout. By the way, before we go any deeper into this corporate fever dream, only about 5% of folks who watch these stories are subscribed. If you're one of the 95% just vibing in silence like I used to be, hit that subscribe button and help me hit my first ever 10,000 subscribers. Let's rise quietly and take over loudly. Anyway, that meeting ended with polite applause, a handshake for Jeremy, and one sad little thank you cupcake for me. Red velvet, cream cheese frosting, no napkin. I choked it down while listening to him field questions about how he handled the backend logic for adaptive load balancing. Spoiler, he once asked me what a sync meant in a Slack DM, and then replied, "Ah, got it," after I linked a Medium post. Didn't see the post-its on my fridge with deployment timelines. The nights I woke up at 3 a.m. wondering if I'd accidentally left debug mode on in prod. The versioning nightmare I solved by building a custom Git hook that tagged every build with the nearest Starbucks location where I finished the code. They didn't know that when Jeremy forwarded the code to the board, it came from a ZIP file I labeled production final full v4. Zip. I handed him personally on a USB drive during his third working from home week in Mexico. He didn't fork my repo. He didn't know what a fork was, so I gave him the build, smiled, told him he did a great job on the slides, and walked out of that boardroom feeling like I'd just sold someone a ticking Rolex made of clay. The next day, I got the call from HR, company restructuring. My position was being dissolved. Jeremy would be absorbing my responsibilities. They asked if I needed help packing up my desk. I told them no thanks. I already wrote the goodbye email 3 months ago. I left the plant on my windowsill. I left the whiteboard with all my sprint plans. I left one thing on the server, a silent line of code tucked away in a backend config, wrapped in a comment that read, "Do not delete, critical patch." And then I walked, smiling, calm, because Jeremy didn't just take my code. He took the version I wanted him to. There's a kind of quiet that sets in when your soul starts leaking out of you in fluorescent lit rooms. Not rage, not grief, just the numb, clock-ticking kind where your brain goes, "This can't be happening," but your spine already knows it is. I spent 6 straight weekends tethered to my monitor like a ghost, tethered to the scene of its own murder. My apartment looked like a code boot camp exploded. Dishes in the sink, hair unwashed, coffee cups stacked like nesting dolls, and in the middle of it all me, building a scalable, multilingual, fully modular web platform on a budget so small it made ramen look like foie gras. I documented everything. Every dependency, every abstraction, every workaround for our duct-taped infrastructure, even recorded voice memos for myself in case someone else had to maintain it. Spoiler alert, someone did, just not for the reasons I thought. Then one Monday morning, Jeremy pops his head into my office with that "I just did something you'll have to clean up" grin. "Hey, kiddo, board meeting in 30. Big reveal, don't miss it." I blinked. "What big reveal?" He didn't answer. Just disappeared like a fart in a conference room, leaving behind the scent of Axe body spray and Red Bull delusion. I followed him into the war room. That's what they called it, like we were launching missiles instead of slowly bankrupting optimism. Jeremy dimmed the lights, cleared his throat, and clicked open the deck. And there it was, my interface, my wireframes, my roadmap. Even the headline slide still had my typo, seamless integration for client onboarding. I misspelled integration at 2:43 a.m. on a Tuesday during a panic attack. I remember because I cried into a bowl of dry cereal while fixing the deployment script 2 hours later. Jeremy didn't fix the typo, but he did fix the credit. Every we in the presentation was about him. Every I was louder than thunder in that damn room. I realized we needed a more robust data pipeline, he said, clicking through a diagram I scribbled on the back of a Chipotle napkin 4 weeks ago. So I restructured the logic here structured. Like he showed up at 11 a.m. with a green juice and a hangover, glanced at my terminal, and then manifested DevOps wizardry with a snap filter. The board clapped. Clapped. One of them said, finally, some senior leadership taking initiative. Another nodded and said, this is the kind of thinking that justifies the next funding round. Jeremy beamed. He actually beamed. Then he turned to me and said, couldn't have done it without the team. Let's give Sarah a round of applause, folks. She worked hard on some back-end stuff. They handed me a cupcake, red velvet again. This time with a little toothpick flag that said thank you. It was like someone ran over your dog and gave you a coupon for a car wash. I walked out of that room with the kind of smile you wear when your molars are grinding into chalk. Went straight to my desk, pulled up the shared company drive, and made a private backup of the entire presentation, complete with timestamps, metadata, and a sticky note to myself. Trust no one who says we're family at work. Then I checked the repo. He hadn't forked it, hadn't even cloned it. He used the build I zipped for him, one labeled production final full v4. Zip, which I handed over after he claimed Git was giving him errors, and could I just send it directly? I stared at the download log. The timestamp was still there. So was the MD5 hash. Untouched, untampered, pristine, which meant the version live on the Boardroom projector, mine. All mine. And it meant something else too. Jeremy didn't know what else was inside that ZIP file. I had just become patient zero for a new strain of office-born vengeance. It had a long fuse, and I was done being quiet. They always pick Friday. Something about legal optics, I guess. Easier to vanish someone when the break room's stocked with bagels, and the rest of the office is half-drunk on Free La Croix and survival. I'd barely finished my first sip of burnt breakroom coffee when my Slack pinged. HR Mandatory 1-1. Conference Room B, 10:30 a.m. No emoji, no hey, not even a fake attempt at small talk. Just cold, sterile letters on a screen that felt like a death certificate typed in Comic Sans. I knew it was coming. Not because I'm psychic, but because Jeremy had been suspiciously chipper all week. His Patagonia vest got tighter. His calendar mysteriously cleared up. And yesterday, he called our front-end intern sport. That's his tell. When Jeremy starts acting like a dad at a little league game, someone's about to get benched. So I dressed for it. Not in black or anything poetic like that. Just clean jeans, clean hair, clean mind. I cleared my browser history, shut down all my sessions, and packed my messenger bag with the efficiency of a woman who's been through this rodeo before. Only this time, the bull was mine, and it was wired to explode. At 10:28, I walked into Conference Room B. HR was already there, along with a lawyer-looking guy who smelled like toner and fear. Sarah, the HR rep said, blinking too much, we want to thank you for everything you've contributed, but the company's undergoing a strategic realignment. Strategic realignment. That's the HR equivalent of a mobster saying we're making changes to the family. I nodded, didn't flinch. Just stared at the stack of papers like they were fortune cookies, full of backhanded compliments. Jeremy will be taking over your current responsibilities, she continued, as part of his transition into the new VP of product role. Oh, VP, so that's what my code was worth, a shiny new title and a seat 2 inches closer to the investors. I asked if I could grab my stuff. They said yes, as long as I had a security escort, like I was going to smuggle out trade secrets in my bra. Back at my desk, I found it already half-packed. My monitor was off. Name tag was gone. My ficus had been watered, though, probably by Lisa from sales, who always meant well but voted against unionizing, because she thought Slack polls were legally binding. I loaded up my bag. Notebook, chargers, mechanical keyboard, because screw them if they think they're keeping my clicky keys. Then, from the bottom drawer, I pulled out the little black USB drive I kept labeled vacation photos. Spoiler, there were no vacation photos. There was, however, a custom staging server deploy script, 3 alternate builds of the platform with varying payloads, and one very specific ZIP file, production final full v4. Zip, the same one Jeremy installed without checking. The same one I modified 3 nights ago with shaking hands and a whiskey buzz, muttering, "You want credit? You better take all of it, asshole." I didn't say goodbye. I didn't do the rounds. I left my thank you cupcake in the fridge, right next to someone's forgotten yogurt, and a post-it that said, "Do not EAT Karen." On the way out, the security guy, nice enough dude, mid-40s, looked like he still played pickup hockey, asked if I wanted a moment in the lobby. I said, "Nah, I'm good." Because I was good. I was so good, in fact, that by the time Jeremy noticed something was wrong, I'd be 3 contracts deep into freelance work, sipping cold brew from a mason jar in a co-working space where nobody called me kiddo. And when that build detonated, they'd know exactly who built it, and exactly who they pushed out the door with a cupcake and a con. 3 weeks before HR handed me a manila folder and a corporate smile, I sat alone in the office at 11:46 p.m., wrapped in the kind of silence that makes you hear your own blood. The lights were off, except for the soft glow of my monitor and the emergency exit sign humming like a bug zapper for dreams. Outside, the cleaning crew vacuumed sins into beige carpet. Inside, I was coding vengeance with surgical precision. It wasn't personal. That's what I told myself as I cracked open the backend config file. Just another task. Just another late night. Just another line of code. Today date more than 2023 to 04-14 function nuke site. Plain, boring, harmless looking. Nestled between some outdated OAuth keys and a deprecated logging toggle. The kind of line no one notices unless they're looking for it. And Jeremy, he didn't even look at code. He looked at decks, charts. Office politics like it was a fantasy league. The function didn't delete anything. I'm not a monster. It just swapped. Function nuke site window dot location dot href equals https portfolio srtech dev / farewell html. A simple redirect to a static page hosted on a private server. I spun up one weekend between takeout orders and revenge fantasies. The page. Pure white background, centered text, minimalist Helvetica font, just like Jeremy liked it. This platform is currently unavailable. Please contact GitHub Portfolio for enterprise-grade rescue services. Invoice attached. Oh, and the GitHub repo? Timestamped commits. Commit messages like final cache optimization SR and added retry logic SR. And yep, Jeremy still sucks SR. Every breadcrumb pointing right back to me. Authorship, proven. Chain of custody, impeccable. Legal deniability. Technically, it was just a redirect. I closed the file. Saved it, pushed the build, sat back and stared at the screen while my coffee went cold. The date was hard-coded, 1 week after the board meeting. The timer was set. The countdown was live. People talk about revenge like it's a fire. Flashy, loud, dramatic. Mine was a fuse, silent, patient, buried deep inside the structure of something beautiful I built with my own calloused hands, a trap disguised as craftsmanship. And if Jeremy had bothered to read a single changelog, might have seen the warning tucked between version notes. v4.4.1 stability improvements, date logic refactor, leave as is. Instead, he thanked me with a cupcake and a pink slip, so I left him with a platform, a ticking one. I imagined him on expiration day, hair slicked back, telling some investor about his system, and then click. Site gone, white screen, invoice, GitHub repo. LinkedIn blowing up with DMs asking, "Hey, did you build this?" And Jeremy realizing he can't fix what he never understood. I didn't feel giddy, didn't feel smug, just ready. The timer had begun, and no one, not even me, could stop it now. Mondays hit different when you're not waiting for some middle manager to ping you about synergy before your first sip of coffee. First Monday out, I woke up at 9:43 a.m. to sunshine and silence. No Slack, no meetings, no quick questions. Just me. Bagel I didn't have to inhale in 3 bites, and a cat I'd adopted the night before out of pure spite. I named her Merge Conflict. That morning, I created a new Upwork profile. Pseudonym, Riley Sharp. Location, remote. Tagline, full stack dev, fast, quiet, precise. Within 2 hours, I'd landed 3 gigs. 2 were basic crud jobs, but the third, platform rebuild for a finance startup bleeding money because their codebase was a mess of copy-pasted Stack Overflow answers and duct tape. I charged my full rate. They didn't blink. While Docker did its thing in the background, I let curiosity get the better of me. I opened LinkedIn. Jeremy's smug, punchable face was right at the top of my feed, framed in artificial sepia with that faux humble caption. Honored to step into the role of VP of Product, grateful to lead such an incredible team. Excited for what's next. Reaction count, 314. Comments from the usual suspects. Couldn't happen to a better guy. You've earned it, Jeremy. Teach me your ways, fire clapping. I scrolled with dead eyes until I hit the part that almost made me laugh. A comment from our CEO saying, your leadership during the platform relaunch was masterful. We're lucky to have you. Same CEO who once called me Sarah from engineering in a company-wide email. I closed the tab, not out of pain, not even bitterness, just confirmation. I'd always suspected that the system wasn't broken, it was working exactly as designed. Reward the loudest guy in the room. Forget the person who built the damn walls. But by Tuesday morning, my old team's Slack logs started leaking. I wasn't spying. Let's just say, I'd forgotten to revoke access to a sandbox account tied to my work email. Total accident. In a channel labeled #prod_bugs, engineers were panicking. Logs were bloated with references to something called Module Hydra. That was my code name. No joke. Hydra was what I called the framework I wrote to replace our clunky middleware. Each head handled a specific microservice, all feeding back into a central node that managed client state and session security. Elegant, powerful, totally undocumented. Why? Because Jeremy said nobody needs that level of detail when I offered to write a proper README. Now that same module was causing recursive loops on certain endpoints. API calls bouncing back and forth like a tennis match on Adderall. And every time someone tried to trace the issue, the console just spit out, warning, Hydra does not respond to mortal commands. Yeah, that one was for me. Tried reverting builds. Didn't work. One junior dev suggested just commenting out Hydra entirely. I nearly choked on my coffee. Removing that would break everything from auth tokens to payment processing. It'd be like trying to remove the heart from a body and replacing it with an air fryer. Still, I felt it, guilt. Not because they didn't deserve the chaos, but because I remembered those late nights, hunched over terminals with people who did care. People who'd stay late, not for recognition, but because they didn't want the clients to suffer. But they weren't the ones in charge. Jeremy was, and Jeremy thought code was just something you downloaded and deployed, like an app on his iPhone. He had no idea that inside his shiny new promotion was a beast stitched together by a woman who stopped asking permission 3 reorgs ago. The system wasn't broken, but it was cracking. I was the only one who knew exactly where the pressure points were. Expiration day landed quiet. No sirens, no explosions, just the soft click of a mouse somewhere in a glass office downtown, followed by the collective sphincter clench of 100 people realizing something very expensive just went terribly wrong. It was exactly 7 days after I walked out with my vacation photos USB. 10:01 a.m. Eastern. Just enough time for Jeremy to grab his triple shot oat milk ego boost and roll into his status meeting 5 minutes late like he's allergic to punctuality and deodorant. Somewhere between a client onboarding call and a slide deck about Q2 momentum, it happened. The entire platform blinked out. I mean gone. Not a 500 error, not a maintenance page. Just white, dead white. No buttons, no branding, no footer links. Just a surgical, center-aligned message in calm Helvetica. This site is currently offline. To restore access, please visit https://github.com/RileySharp/platform rescue invoice. $147,000 USD services rendered. Full stack system rebuild, deployment architecture, custom middleware suite Hydra. Net 3 days. Late fees apply. Clean, professional. I debated adding clip art, maybe a sad clown or a burning office JPEG, but restraint is the soul of style. The static page was hosted on a private Linode box. $5 a month per paid for 2 years, worth every cent. The invoice, attached as a downloadable PDF signed R. Sharp, freelance systems consultant. The repo, public, fully documented. Timestamped commits going back 10 months. All under my alt name, Riley. Every module attributed, every framework tagged. Get logs showing my authorship in plain view, because I had committed every change from a separate local account while building. Meticulous, untouchable. Within minutes, my burner Gmail started pinging. Urgent site down, do you have a copy of the code? From CTO@FWD. WTF internal email thread showing Jeremy claiming the outage is likely DNS related. Bless his heart. Then the Slack leaks started trickling into Twitter. Screenshots from internal channels. #engineering help. Has anyone checked the last build hash? Who is R? Sharp, and why are they holding our site hostage? Does anyone know what Hydra even is? Why is the invoice real? Boardroom, did legal vet this contract? Jeremy assured us she was junior. Why was there no contingency plan? Legal, technically, the deploy was executed post-termination. We may be liable. I sat on my couch in sweatpants, drinking lukewarm coffee, reading it all like morning cartoons. Merge conflict, my cat pawed at the screen every time Jeremy's name popped up. Smart girl. I didn't celebrate, not yet, because this was the part in the horror movie where the villain sits up in the background after you think they're dead. Jeremy wasn't gone, not yet. He was probably in a conference room right now, sweating through his Uniqlo blazer, asking someone how to roll back to the previous version without realizing the previous version was a black hole of undocumented spaghetti he never understood. They'd eventually find the GitHub. They'd have to, and when they did, they'd see the truth. Not in a Slack message, not in some HR file labeled Sarah quiet, hardworking, lacks leadership presence. No, the truth was in the code. Every loop, every comment, every module signed / written by SR was all there. Proof of authorship, proof of theft, proof of who really built the foundation they were now crawling through blindfolded. My phone buzzed, unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Today wasn't for calls. Today was for watching the empire realize who really built the walls they decorated and who set the clock counting down. The email came at 7:42 a.m. Tuesday. Subject line, we'd like to talk. From chair at. No, dear Sarah. Oh, signature. Just a 3-sentence body that smelled like desperation and old money cologne. We're currently investigating the system outage. I understand you may have insights or resources that can assist. Please let me know if you're available for conversation this week. Funny how fast junior dev becomes valued collaborator when the product your entire valuation hinges on is now a glorified splash page with an invoice and a GitHub link. I didn't respond, not right away. Instead, I made breakfast. 2 eggs, toast, real butter, none of that margarine gaslighting. I watched the sun come up through my apartment window, thought about going back to sleep, then thought about Jeremy. By noon, news started dripping out. Jeremy had been temporarily suspended pending internal review. Translation: human sacrifice to calm the investor gods. IT had spent 36 hours combing through backups, only to discover they were all tied to an AWS instance Jeremy didn't have full access to because he never requested it, because he didn't know how, because he thought DevOps was a trendy coffee blend. The one guy on the team who might have figured it out had rage quit last quarter after Jeremy called him overly emotional for asking to not work weekends. Without access to the keys, they were screwed. They could rebuild from scratch. In theory, but it would take 6 to 8 months. Minimum, and that's if they could find someone who understood Hydra, which, as of this morning, still wasn't even fully mapped out. One engineer on Reddit had started a thread trying to reverse engineer it. The top reply just said, bro, no. Around 3 p.m., I got another message, this one from an old colleague still inside. Boards in full triage. They finally read your repo. They're impressed. Jeremy's throwing people under the bus like it's his cardio. I texted back a single emoji. Snake. Then I opened an old spreadsheet I hadn't touched in 6 months. Line 14, domain's legacy. There it was. Still green. Still mine. North Gradio, that was the company's original domain, pre-rebrand. The one tied to half their SEO, 5 years of email newsletters, and 100 white-labeled client dashboards, still quietly indexed by Google. I bought it 6 weeks before I left. Just renewed it last Thursday. $14.99 on a registrar Jeremy once called too ugly to trust. I own their past. Their present was broken, and the only way they got a future was if I picked up the phone. I finally replied to the board chair at 5:06 p.m. Happy to talk. Please route inquiries through Riley Sharp Consulting. All terms available at Portfolio SR Tech Dev / rates availability. Limited. Hourly rate, non-negotiable. 15 minutes later, my site traffic spiked 600%. IP lookup traced most of it to their office subnet. I pictured them, hunched around a boardroom screen, reading my terms while trying not to scream. Trying to piece together who R. Sharp was. realizing too late that the girl they called too quiet to lead anything had been building an empire while they were perfecting their LinkedIn headers. They wanted a hero to fix it. Too bad. I don't fix things anymore, I own them. The offer came dressed up in corporate lipstick, perfumed with urgency, and just enough flattery to choke on. Subject line: strategic opportunity, rejoin North Grid temporarily body. Sarah, like to formally invite you back in a temporary consulting capacity to assist with urgent system restoration. Compensation would reflect your expertise, double your previous salary, with full autonomy over hours and work conditions. This would be a short-term engagement, just enough to stabilize. We hope to move forward collaboratively. Talent acquisition, North Grid they CC'd legal, of course. Double my salary. Cute. I read it while stirring almond milk into my coffee with the smug precision of a Bond villain on her day off. I didn't even flinch, because I already had the retainer page ready. Had written it 2 days ago. It opened with the line, "You don't get to pay for my silence. You pay for my time, and you pay first." Link I sent them was simple. Riley Sharp Consulting Rescue Tier Package, $147,000 initial deployment recovery 30-day retainer. Required payment due upfront, via wire or verified PayPal. No meetings under 30 minutes, all communications via email or pre-scheduled Zoom, NDA reviewed and rewritten on my terms, no Jeremy. Ever. Within the hour, my Stripe dashboard pinged. First payment pending. Didn't even try to negotiate. Of course they didn't. Negotiation requires leverage, and they'd already handed that over with my severance and a red velvet cupcake. Speaking of Jeremy, at 11:19 p.m., his name popped up in my inbox like mildew in a forgotten lunchbox. Subject: you did this. No greeting, no punctuation. Just, this is your fault, you could have helped. You didn't have to make it personal. Oh, Jeremy, sweet, confused Jeremy. Didn't reply with a paragraph. I didn't send a lecture. I didn't dig up receipts of every time he called me hormonal or forwarded my code with his name on the Git log. I just sent one thing, a smiley face, slightly smiling face, and a PayPal invoice. Memo: emotional damages, non-refundable, $17,000 that night. I danced around my apartment with Merge Conflict curled up on the couch and Billie Eilish blaring like war drums. I wasn't vindictive, I was right. And more than that, I was finally seen. Not in the way they wanted, but in the way that mattered. I set the rates. I owned the keys, and they were just clients now. No more we, no more family, just terms, contracts, boundaries, and me doing what I do best, building, quietly, until it's too late for anyone else to catch up. I got the tip from a former intern, one of the good ones, the kind who still apologized for meetings that ran long and actually pushed code that compiled. He messaged me through an old burner Slack account we used to use during all-hands meetings to make memes. You didn't hear this from me, but they're dropping the rebrand, going back to North Grid. Investors hate the new name. SEO's tanking. I nearly snorted cold brew out of my nose. Of course they were. Their sleek, buzzwordy rebrand, Centric Systems, or whatever sterile nonsense their agency cooked up, was a disaster. Turns out you can't build a shiny new image on top of a burning platform. Clients wanted stability, recognition, a name they remembered from 5 years ago when the company still felt human. North Grid, you know, the name I quietly bought 6 weeks before my exit, $14.99. Auto-renewed, parked under my LLC, complete with a full registrar lock and private whois. It was petty, it was tactical, it was art. I waited. And sure enough, 5 days later, an email landed in my LLC's inbox from a digital brand consultancy. Polite, vague, clearly sent on behalf of someone else. We're reaching out regarding the acquisition of a dormant domain your company currently owns. We'd be happy to make a competitive offer. I replied 5 minutes later with a PDF. North Gridio Premium Legacy Brand Reinstatement Package Domain. $250,000 transfer fee. $3,500 execution window. 48 hours terms. No installment plans. No contingencies. No contact after transfer. No smiley face this time. No threats. No gloating. Just a price. They paid. Full wire transfer confirmed and cleared. No apology. No phone call. No, we regret how things ended. Just a soulless PayPal confirmation and a LinkedIn notification that Jeremy's profile was now on leave, exploring new opportunities. I stood in my kitchen that night, barefoot, laughing so hard I dropped my phone into a sink full of dishes. Because that was it. Not revenge, control. They had wrung me out, used my silence like it was compliance, then discarded me like an overripe banana from the company fruit bowl. But silence isn't weakness. It's a weapon, and when timed right, it detonates. Turns out silence is a strategy if you time it right. Big thanks, you legends of the old office days. Subscribe to keep the switch-flicking chaos alive. Your ex-boss is shaking in their loafers.